Your mother calls you twice in one afternoon to ask the same question. She forgets where she parked at a store she shopped at for 20 years. She stands in her own kitchen holding a glass, unsure for a second what it's for. And the whole family starts using the same word: dementia. Quietly, carefully, like they're trying it on before they say it out loud. Here's what almost nobody in that kitchen thinks to ask. What is she taking? Not illegal drugs, not anything dramatic. The allergy pill she's had since spring. The bladder medication her urologist started 2 years ago. The sleep aid from the pharmacy shelf that doesn't even need a prescription. One at a time, each one looks harmless. Together, inside an aging brain, they can behave like something else entirely. I'm Dr. Alex John, and in 15 years of practice, I have sat across from more families than I can count who were already grieving a diagnosis that hadn't actually been made. They had decided it was dementia before a single test confirmed it, because the story was so familiar. Getting old means losing your edge. That's just what happens. That belief is comfortable. It's also often wrong. This is not a video about 9 random drugs to panic over. This is about one mechanism, hiding inside a dozen different pill bottles that the medical system was never built to add up. I'm going to show you what it is, what the actual research says about it, where that research gets shaky, and exactly what to do if you recognize your parent, your spouse, or yourself in what I'm about to describe. Let's name it plainly. It's called anticholinergic burden, and once you understand it, you will never look at a medicine cabinet the same way again. Here's the biology, in plain English. Your brain runs on a handful of chemical messengers, and one of the most important for memory and clear thinking is called acetylcholine. Think of it as the signal that lets one brain cell hand a thought to the next one cleanly. It's what allows a new memory to actually stick instead of sliding past you. As we age, the brain naturally produces less of it, and the whole system becomes more fragile, more dependent on every bit that's left. Now here's the problem. A huge number of extremely common medications work, in part, by blocking acetylcholine. That's not a flaw. It's often the entire point. An antihistamine blocks it to dry up a runny nose. A bladder medication blocks it to calm an overactive muscle. An old generation antidepressant blocks it to help you sleep. Each of these drugs was designed to interrupt acetylcholine somewhere in the body to fix one specific problem. The trouble is, acetylcholine doesn't stay in one lane. Block it in the bladder, and you're also blocking it to some degree in the brain. And unlike a single loud side effect, this doesn't usually announce itself. It doesn't cause a rash or a stomachache. It shows up as someone being a little slower to find a word, a little foggier by evening, a little more likely to ask the same question twice, which is exactly the profile everyone mistakes for ordinary aging. Here's the part that makes this genuinely dangerous rather than just unfortunate. Nobody in the system is required to add it up. Your primary care doctor prescribes the blood pressure medication. A urologist, separately, prescribes the bladder drug. A sleep specialist, separately, adds something for insomnia. Each doctor is managing their own piece, often without seeing the full list, and the pharmacy fills whatever is written without flagging the combined chemical weight sitting on one brain. There is no single number stamped on your chart that says total anticholinergic load. There should be. There isn't. I've sat with patients who were taking 4 separate medications, each mild on its own, each individually approved and reasonable, that together were quietly doing to their thinking what one strong drug alone would never have been blamed for. So let's look at what the actual evidence says, because this is where I want to be very careful with you. Not sensationalize it, just tell you the truth. The most solid piece of research on this comes from the University of Washington and Group Health, published in JAMA Internal Medicine in 2015. Researchers led by Dr. Shelley Gray tracked nearly 3,500 adults aged 65 and older for an average of 7 years, using actual pharmacy records rather than people's memory of what they'd taken, which is a much more reliable method. They found something specific and important. It wasn't just whether someone had ever taken an anticholinergic drug. It was how much and for how long. People who used a strong anticholinergic medication at a high dose for the equivalent of 3 years or more had a 54% higher relative risk of developing dementia compared with minimal or no use. For Alzheimer's disease specifically, the increased risk was 63%. And critically, this was a dose-response relationship. More exposure, more risk. That pattern is one of the things that makes researchers take a finding seriously, because it's the kind of signal you'd expect if the drugs were genuinely contributing to the damage, not just coincidentally present. A second major study out of the United Kingdom and published in JAMA Internal Medicine in 2019 looked at over 58,000 people diagnosed with dementia and compared them to more than 225,000 people who did not have dementia. This study broke the risk down by category of drug. Bladder medications were associated with about a 65% higher odds of dementia at the highest exposure level. Certain antidepressants, closer to a 29% increase. The researchers estimated that if the relationship is truly causal, roughly 1 in 10 dementia diagnoses in their population could be attributable to anticholinergic drug exposure. 1 in 10. Sit with that for a second. A more recent, very large analysis focused specifically on bladder medications found that oxybutynin, one of the most commonly prescribed drugs for overactive bladder, showed a consistent association with increased dementia risk at higher cumulative doses. While a newer class of bladder medication that works through a completely different pathway, one that doesn't touch acetylcholine at all, showed no such pattern. That's an important clue because it points at the mechanism itself, not just the condition being treated. Now, I promised you the truth, including the messy parts, so here it is. Not every drug people worry about in this conversation has evidence this strong. Studies on proton pump inhibitors, the heartburn medications, have produced wildly inconsistent results. Some large studies found an increased dementia risk of over 40%. Other equally large studies tracking hundreds of thousands of people found no association at all, or even a slightly protective one once researchers accounted for other health differences between users and non-users. The honest answer right now is that the science on PPIs and dementia is unresolved. And the research on benzodiazepines, drugs like alprazolam and lorazepam, is even messier. Older studies suggested a large increased risk. But when more recent research controlled carefully for something called confounding by indication, meaning the fact that the anxiety or insomnia that led someone to need the drug in the first place might itself be an early symptom of the dementia to come, that risk shrank dramatically. And in some of the best designed recent studies, it disappeared almost entirely. I'm telling you this not to undercut the point, but to make it more trustworthy. The anticholinergic burden story, built primarily on antihistamines, older antidepressants, and bladder medications, is one of the most consistently replicated findings in geriatric pharmacology. The story on stomach acid drugs and anti-anxiety medications is genuinely still being argued out by scientists who disagree with each other. A source you can trust tells you which is which. So what do you actually do with this? The starting point isn't panic, and it isn't throwing out a medicine cabinet. It's a single conversation. And I want to give you the exact tool to have it. It's called a brown bag review, and geriatricians use some version of this constantly. Take every single medication a person is on, prescription and over-the-counter, every daily vitamin, every sleep aid, every allergy pill. Put them literally in a bag and bring the whole bag to one appointment, ideally with a pharmacist or a geriatric specialist rather than a single specialist managing just one piece of the picture. Ask directly, out loud, what is our total anticholinergic burden here, and can any of this be reduced or switched to something that doesn't carry that weight? There are tools clinicians use for exactly this purpose. Scoring scales that assign a numeric anticholinergic burden score to a person's entire medication list, not just one drug at a time. Ask if your doctor's office uses one, or ask your pharmacist to run the full list through one. This single request can surface a problem that 4 separate specialists, each looking at their own prescription, would never catch on their own. For a lot of these drugs, safer alternatives exist that treat the same problem through a different pathway, one that doesn't lean on blocking acetylcholine. Newer allergy medications largely stay out of the brain. Newer bladder medications work through a different receptor entirely. Newer antidepressants have a much lighter anticholinergic footprint than the older generation. None of this means stop anything on your own. It means walk in with a specific, informed question instead of a vague worry. Because a vague worry gets a vague answer, and a specific question about anticholinergic burden gets you an actual review. Now let's talk about the objection I already know is forming in your head, because I hear it constantly. My mother has been on this exact medication for 15 years, and she's sharp as ever. I believe you. That's real, and it matters. Not everyone who takes an anticholinergic medication develops cognitive decline. Not even close. These are population-level findings, meaning they describe an increased probability across thousands of people, not a guaranteed outcome for any one individual. Genetics, overall health, how many different anticholinergic drugs are stacked at once, and simple individual variation all shape whether any single person is affected. This isn't a reason to dismiss the research. It's a reason to understand what it actually claims, which is risk, not destiny. And you might be thinking of a doctor who reassured you there's nothing to worry about. That doctor may be entirely right for your specific situation. But I'd gently ask, did that reassurance come after they added up every anticholinergic medication on the full list from every prescriber? Or did it come from looking at just the one drug they personally prescribed? That distinction is the entire point of this video. No single doctor sees the whole bag. You or the person caring for your parent are often the only one positioned to put the whole picture on the table at once. Here's where I want to leave you. The comforting story is that decline is simply what age does to a mind, quietly, inevitably, with nothing to be done about it. The harder, more useful truth is that some of what gets labeled as aging is actually a chemical burden sitting on the brain, built up one reasonable prescription at a time, from doctors who were each doing their job correctly, but never saw the total. That fog is not always destiny. Sometimes it's addition, and addition can be checked. Bring the bag. Ask the question. Get the full picture in front of one person who can actually see all of it. That conversation costs you one appointment. Not asking it can cost a family years of a person they still had, mistaken for years they didn't. I'm Dr. Alex John. Don't accept the story until someone has actually checked the math.